Glad to have you join us now. Let's go into the discussion now. So take a look at the multiple exchange rates versus a single or unified rate has been proposed, and the debate on between some markets observers and of course some also who are also watching the market as well, whether to be or not to be. So that's what we'll be looking at, and to look at how this will impact the market and which is good for our own economy in Nigeria is what we're looking at exactly. And to join us talking about this is Mr. Garba Kurfi, who is the CEO of APT Securities. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so first let me quickly ask you straight question. A lot of people have been arguing or debating whether to resort or to change from the current multiple exchange rate that it's ongoing now to unify single rate as proposed by some politician, or some people politicians are actually calling for it now. So in your own analysis, which one do you think is best for the country?
Well,
maybe you should
yes.
perhaps
you look at our economy.
Okay.
Our economy is more or less is dependent on the importation.
Okay.
And if you look at most of the items we currently use in Nigeria, over 80% of them are not locally made but rather imported.
Okay.
And when you look at our foreign exchange, the major source of our foreign exchange is crude oil. Therefore, when you are in that kind of situation, to have a single exchange rate may not necessarily be better for the economy. The simple reason is very obvious that your source is only one source. But a country where they have multiple sources, or where they don't depend on a single product, if they go for a single rate, it makes life easier and it allowed the in and out of the foreign exchange much better. But such country like ours, I think is a high time to think for a single interest rate for now.
Okay.
Take for instance, in 2007 April, the Central Bank of Nigeria introduced importer-exporter FX window. And since the time they opened that window, we have seen a lot of the foreign inflow into the country. In fact, if you take FSDMQ, had a trade of over 175 trillion last year. And in that volume of trading, 36.6% of the trading was done on FX.
Let's say 85 trillion naira was traded.
175 trillion naira was traded in that market.
That's huge.
That's huge. And not only that one, 36.6% of the volume traded is arise from the FX trading. So FX trading what? Through the export-importer FX window trading. So for us, that reduced the gap, because at a time, the exchange rate went as high as 500 per dollar. But since that window was open, we got a lot of inflow and now stabilized the market to reduce the exchange rate to almost around 360 compared to the official rate of 305. When you look at the margin, it's 18%. And the beauty of this is that everybody knows that the CBN did not permit many items to enjoy that privilege rate. So when you are in such country where you have certain products that are not allowed to enjoy the official rate, and now you have to go to the market, you need a market where it will allow you to get in and get out. Always we are encouraging foreign investors, especially in the portfolio investment. In the portfolio investment for last year, over $16.4 billion was traded through that window. So you can see that without that window, nobody wants to bring his dollar at the official rate of 305 compared to 360 or 358. So for economies such as ours, these two windows will continue to be working and better for the economy until such a point that our source of foreign exchange is no longer crude oil. It will be other source. And where we have other source of the exchange rate or dollars, not only the crude oil, you can make it a single.
Okay.
But for now, look at it. We sell crude oil. We import refined product. So if you did not, if you allowed it to go at that single rate, let's say 360, you will see that the amount of subsidy that the government will subsidize in terms of the refined product, it will be huge.
Interesting.
Yes, but if you allowed it to go, you are selling this crude oil and you are exchanging, you are buying the refined product at around 305, it minimizes at least the subsidy by more than 18%, which ought to have been done if you are using a single exchange rate. So for us and for the economy, for the time being, there is the wisdom and the need to have this multiple rate. But definitely sure, as the gap is very reducing, and as more refinery open and start functioning, I can see that we can move it to single interest rate whereby all other will be aligned. But don't forget, nobody enjoys the official rate unless he abide by so many other conditions.
Okay.
Like,
and what are these conditions?
and the conditions are, you must have evidence that you have been paying your tax.
Okay.
That is, the federal inland revenue must
For
work
you to enjoy the official
that,
rate.
the official rate.
Okay. An official rate is about 305.
305.
Okay.
And don't forget that quite a number of our local industry that import their raw material outside, they benefit from that because they have all what it takes to prove that they are paying their tax and they are complying with the VAT and they are paying their pension contribution, every other law that stated to abide with. You will find that most of the local industry enjoyed for that. So that gives them the official rate of around 305. And don't forget we're in a competitive market. You know we have deficit of infrastructures in terms of power, mobility, security. All these deficiency, our competitors in the other part of the world are not experiencing it. And they have no cost to it. But our local investors, they have all these additional costs added over and above the cost of production. So if they don't get the foreign exchange at a lower rate, then as they get it at the open market or in a single rate like around 360, it will erode their competition and it will hijack their prices to be much higher. That will discourage the local investors or the local patronage from the people because the price will be much higher compared to our competitors. But by so doing this official rate, they get that margin of 18%, which is enough for them for survival. So for me, for now, the government need to maintain this two-way code. But where we are able to increase the agricultural sector and the other sector of the economy, I think there is nothing wrong in the very near future to go into the single rate so that every other will follow it in the same rate. But for now, we can see the wisdom of doing that, especially in view of the fact that we have deficit in our infrastructures, in terms of security, in terms of the railway and road. And all these are added to the cost of production.
Okay, I want us to really look at it. The investor and exporter window.
Yes.
Now, I want us to analyze it. There are so many issues surrounding that as well. This window specifically, let's look at who and who benefit from this window.
When you look at this window, the exporter, importer, everybody benefit because it's a win-win situation. One, you allowed the market interplay. So you can see the price exchange. You go there, you see it today 360 in the morning. By in the afternoon, it may be 361 or 358. So the exchange allowed the interplay of the market. And the beauty of it, most of our exporters of the agri project are allowed to sell their product outside and bring their dollars through that window. and therefore they are getting a good margin, and that encourages them to look for more product to export to earn foreign exchange. The second other side of it is the portfolio investors. Okay. Most of the portfolio investors, they come with their dollar, play in the capital market or treasury bill, thereafter earn their earnings, convert it into that exchange rate and move out. And that gives them pre-in and pre-out. And therefore, it allowed a lot of the foreign investors to play into our market. We need that liquidity. Not only that, remember we have diaspora. A lot of Nigerians are living abroad and they work hard to earn their living, and they want to exchange or transport their foreign exchange into the country. So there is no need to restrict those people to sell it at the official rate of 305. Rather, they have this exporter-importer window where they can exchange it at 358, 360. And if you look at all this money transfer, you will see that they use the same window. And the same thing was airline and so many other industries that especially the restricted items, they go through that window and do and make whatever the dollar they are looking for, they exchange it there and go and import those items. So to us, it is a win-win situation. The economy is stable, and that is why you see the Consumer Production Index, CMI, is rising for over 22 months. Since the time that window was opened, it keeps on rising. And what does that mean? It shows that our production capacity is keep on increasing. If there is increase in the production capacity, you are likely to have more employment, and therefore the economy will be for the better.
Okay, I want us to state a little bit, because a lot of people will be watching this program and they want to know who are these operators of these I&E windows. Of course, it's a policy from the CBN, of course, but a lot of people say, okay, who are really, could there be a group of people, a group of exporters and importers, or is it a special bank or perhaps a commercial bank or money deposit bank that is set up to take care of that aspect? Perhaps.
All the banks that are licensed by CBN that do the official rate are also permit to play through FMDQ market. Okay. And what it means that all the importer and the exporter that want to bring their dollar into, you can choose any of your bank choice, pass it through there, they will take it through that market and exchange it at that rate. The same thing if you want to go out of the country, you can take your naira there, they will buy you the dollar at that exchange rate and exit at the time you so wish. The beauty of it, it allowed the freedom of in and out, and it allowed the market to interplay. Not only market to interplay, now you can even hedge against the future fluctuation, because you can play the option, the forward, the put and call contract, which are all hedge derivatives product obtained in this FMDQ. So if today you are bringing your dollar and you want to take your dollar in 6 months, you can go and hedge it against 6 months, so that even if there is any fluctuation in the rate, it will not affect you. And what brings this one is that exporter-importer FX window. So it allowed this, and it encouraged more investors to come because they can hedge against the future fluctuation.
So let's go back a little bit. Before the CBN started that policy, there was what we were used to. Sometimes there was an issue of accessing the forex and the currency. They had dollars in the market, and there was also an issue between the Bureau de Change operators and of course the CBN, and so the prices. So let's look at where the economy was, and of course the market at that time, and operators of people will import and export. So where was the economy at that time? Let's look at that.
You see, when the CBN decided to restrict the movement of the foreign exchange in and out, the economy went down, because we have what we call the global village. Okay. Nobody has the monopoly for himself, and nobody has sufficient for everything. Wherever you are, whether developed or developing, whether frontier or emerging market, you will see that you need rob and rob each other. So you need the inflow, you need the outflow. And therefore, the foreign investors, they are all out with their eagle eye looking where can I get in and out without any much restriction. Before the opening of this window, a lot of the foreign investors choose not to play in our market, and that affects our capital market. If you remember, for almost 3 consecutive years, 2015, 2016, and 2014, our market was completely down. Until 2017, when that window opened, and our market gained over 42%. And that shows you that the foreigners are willing to play our market if there is pre-entry and pre-exit. And that window allowed it for that. Not only that one, a lot of people bring items into this country through bill of exchange, and therefore they are getting it on credit. And the only way you can get bill of exchange is if they are sure there is a window they can buy this foreign exchange and remit the remittance on time. And since that window opened, you will see a lot of people that import fish and many other imported items, they get it on credit because they know they will give them bill, and by the end of the day, they will be able to acquire the foreign exchange and remit the returns of the proceed on time. So therefore, it allowed all this window. So many players were free to go into this market, buy and exchange. You will see it today. People want to go for health issue. People want to go for school education and so many other things. You have no choice, but you can go to this window, buy your dollar and remit it as freely as anything. And a lot of the money started coming because most of the diaspora see this window as an opportunity to remit their money and get the value for their money.
I'm also, an argument that is also there is the fact that there are fears that this will help some of these foreign operators in our local market to repatriate most of their funds. So how concerned are you about that?
Well, you see, you need investors. When you need investors, you don't have them locally, you need foreign investors.
Yes, sir.
So definitely sure, if you want the foreign investors to come into your country, there must be an exit window. Okay. If there is no exit window, nobody comes into you. You cannot invite people into your room and you lock them in. Nobody will accept this. The foreign investors have many opportunities cut across the world. So if you don't have it here, they go to those countries where they have it. So to us, it is very easy. By the time you open that window, you see it. As I told you, last year alone, over $16 billion comes through that window. And as I'm talking to you now, in January alone, over $2 billion walk through that window. So more foreign exchange is likely coming, and that stabilizes your exchange, and that boosts your foreign reserves. If you look at it, our foreign reserve moved to over 43 billion. This couldn't have been achieved without this window. So you need this window, and this window is a win-win situation. It helps you to reserve because people have alternative. Day in, day out, people bring dollars, they do their business. When they finish, they know that they can go back to the same window and buy back. So foreign investors cannot come without this kind of window. If you want a single rate whereby everybody will go into the same rate, the likelihood is that you will discourage your local manufacturing industry from getting it as a reasonable rate whereby they will mitigate the other cost effect to their allocations. So if you do that, you will see that most of local operators may not likely get it.
We will have to come back and talk more about that one, especially the disadvantage when we have to get back or adopt the unified rate in terms of foreign exchange rate. So we'll talk about that. All right, let's quickly take a moment. We'll be back to talk more. Join us again. Glad to have you back now. We're also talking about the unified exchange rate versus multiple exchange rates when it comes to foreign exchange rates. Well, and of course, still with me here is to Mr. Garba Kurfi, the CEO of APT Securities. Thank you for your time. Now I know you were trying to look at the other side, the flip side, if we have to adopt the unified exchange rate, perhaps you might need to break it down a little bit. At what point would it be right for a country to go for a single or what you call the unified exchange rate?
Well, for a country that have multiple sources of foreign exchange, they don't depend on one single product as we do. It will be better to have a single exchange rate. But when you look at it, you must have your other source of foreign exchange.
Okay.
That is, you can export, both industrial export and agriculture. If you look at it, before we were importing cement into the country. Today we are a net exporter. We can export cement to Togo, to Benin, to Ghana and other countries. We no longer import cement. That is one source of revenue. Now agriculture is improving. Let it improve in such a way that it will give us a very good source of revenue, aside the crude oil, so that by the time we have shrink in the price of the crude oil, it will not affect our source of the revenue. If we have a multiple source of these, using single exchange rate is better, because what it means that you allow the interplay of the market to dictate the price of the exchange rate at any given time.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, yes. Because we have sources, different,
yes.
multiple sources of income,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay, so what you're saying is that if we only depend on one source of income,
yes,
that is when multiple exchange rate is good for, I beg your pardon now, the unified exchange rate
unified
is good.
Exchange.
But because we operate different sources of revenue.
Yes, revenue.
So multiple
and
exchange
therefore,
is
those
better.
will complement. So whatever the side effect of one, it will not affect. Look at it today. If the price of crude oil crashed to as what it crashed in the 2016, 2017, to as low as $30 per barrel, what will be the source of our foreign exchange? It will all shrink, and you will see that the other side cannot augment the shortfall. But if we reach a point where our other side of the economy can augment the shortfall, even in the case of the lower price of the crude oil, single exchange rate will be better for the economy.
Okay.
But for now, since we are more dependent on the crude oil dollar, so we must apply this one in order the multiple rate in order to augment the shortcoming of our side of the economy.
I see now.
Yes.
Okay, let's also look at, I'm sure that you've also said earlier how these multiple exchange rate will help us and grow the economy as well. But let's also look at the policy of this nature. Now, we understand that sometimes that a lot of people will have to go, and borrow, or perhaps borrow from the bank and all of that. The CBN also sometimes try to borrow from the bank as well. So how do we balance this issue of high cost of borrowing, of course, to grow the economy, and then of course with this multiple exchange rate that we have at the moment? How do we balance the two?
For now, it will be, you can't eat your cake and have it. The cost of the pond, if you look at it, an average industry pay between 24 to 25%. When you look at other parts of the world, you are talking of single digit. Most of them, they pay less than 7%. So how can you bring this one down? This can only be bring down if we encourage our habit of saving. Look at the time they introduced pension fund. Today we have over 8 trillion. Assuming we have other source of saving, where we'll encourage people to save, so the more we have fund to expand, the less the exchange rate go high. But because our saving culture is still very low, we need to maintain that one. Otherwise, the exchange rate will go very high. Because if banks are faced with a single interest rate, majority of them, they will divert their fund instead of lending and start trading on the foreign exchange. And the moment they started trading into foreign exchange, the price will go very high and the exchange rate will go out of stable position, and therefore everything price will go very high. And most of the local industry will be starved. So that is why now we have to sustain where we are, that look, we have to use this multiple exchange rate in order to stabilize our economy. Because I'm telling you, the crude oil, it gives us bulk of the foreign exchange. But remember, most of our petroleum product that we consume is refined outside. And you don't need naira, you need dollar to buy it. So if you don't have the official rate, you go into the single interest, the price of these crude oil, even the diesel that we are buying at 45, it can go 300 and above. And that will affect the transportation, and that will affect the other side of the economy. So for the time being, we just have to manage what we are managing. But the most important for CBN, they must be transparent, because there is no need for you to get the dollar at that subsidized rate about 17 to 18%. Well, for the same purpose, I will go to outside the market and pay that same rate. If you do this, it will encourage round tripping, and it will make people to be lazy, using the opportunity to get the dollar at the subsidized rate, only for them to exchange it at the higher rate and start making money for doing nothing. And this must be a stop. And I don't think that CBN allowed that.
Well, there are also the fear of holding dollars as well.
Holding dollars is only where you don't allow the market to play.
Okay.
Today, you allowed that window of exporter, importers, FX window, allowed the exchange rate. So why do you hold it? Any bank that hold it, if you look at it throughout 2018, dollar did not appreciate by more than 3 to 5%. So why should you hold it? You are better off to go and buy a treasury bill or federal government bond and make money, but not through holding. And that would make even the Malang business very easier, because if you go to Malang Biridi Change, you will see it. He will give you two-way quoting. If you are selling 360, if you are selling 358, if you are buying 360. So he give you two-way. And that makes the differences very marginal and discourage people holding dollars. If you look at it, for almost over a year, people are no longer keeping dollars against the inflation or against any future fluctuation, because the fluctuation is almost no more.
Interesting. Okay, let's look at the interest rate of the CBN when we talk about the monetary. Of course, the general monetary policy rate has been left unchanged, and that has been a long time. So, which means that the economy has perhaps remained on the same spot. Do you see CBN reviewing the current monetary policy stance as we proceed?
Just like what you are saying, for over 22 months, the MPR remained 14%. That's right. And therefore, if you look at all other indicators remain the same. I think the fear of CBN, they want to sustain that one, not because they like to do it, but to ensure that there is stability in the exchange rate. Because as I'm telling you, bankers are very smart. Bring the interest rate down to single digit, they will take their money, instead of buying the bond and treasury bill, they will start using the money to buy a dollar. And then the hoarding will come and the exchange rate will rise. And therefore it will bring all these rates that will make many people attractive to hoard the foreign exchange rather than to keep their money in the bank. So CBN wants to ensure the stability of the exchange rate. That is why they better maintain the rate at 14%. And don't forget that the inflation is still about 2 digits. You are talking of 12 to 13%. So where you have an inflation around 12 to 13%, you cannot bring down the interest rate to single digit. If you do it, you will discourage saving. And once you discourage saving, you will find every other of the economy will suffer much.
Okay, as we wrap up, I want us to look at best way for the economy in terms of managing. If you look at the macroeconomic indicators, of course, we talk about interest rate now. Yes. We'll just talk about, of course, the inflation rate as well. There are other parameters the GDP, we saw that there's a marginal increase. However, some people have said it wasn't significant enough, looking at the fact that the IMF is putting us as between 2.3%, of course, in 2019. So how do you suppose the CBN balance, or the government balance between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy to grow the economy?
Well, you see, when you are talking of the fiscal policy, you look at the budget. In a country where is our budget today? It's with the National Assembly. Even where the budget is submitted on time, it takes them an average 4 to 6 months to approve the budget. You will find it very difficult to use the fiscal policy to address the economy. So you are left with only monetary policy, which is outside their control, is controlled by the central bank. Had it been the National Assembly understand the working of the budget and understand the wisdom of approving the budget on time, the fiscal policy plus the monetary policy, the two of them combined together will be used as a weapon to address the economy. But today, as we are, you hardly use the fiscal policy because of the delay we get into the budget. The budget was submitted in December last year. Today we are talking of February. The National Assembly is not there. And if not because the tenure of this National Assembly is coming to an end of May, I can assure you this budget may not be likely going to be approved before April. And therefore, if 1/3 of the tenure of the budget is exhausted before approval of the budget, and in most cases, by the time they approve the budget, you will see that they will drag with the executive. Because the working of the budget in the developed economy, National Assembly and the federal government, they work hand in hand. So that approving the budget is never an issue in US, it's never an issue in UK. And where it is an issue, it definitely shall affect the economy. But ours, for the last 3 consecutive years, none of the budget was approved before me. And therefore, what you are left with a budget to work for just half of the year. And this is not good for the challenging economy such as ours. We need fiscal policy and monetary policy working concurrently to address the economy. And unless this work concurrently, that is why our GDP, even though it's marginally improving, it could have been better if they work concurrently and they allow the two to work into each other. And I could have said that could have made to address the issue of inflation and bring the interest rate lower, and that will make fund cheaper for the manufacturing side, agricultural side, that can get it in a single digit. But for now, it will be very, very difficult to get it on such rate.
Give us your parting shot on this. Election just got postponed. Of course, this has created a perception, of course, in the business community and investors community as well. So what do you foresee that will become of the economy after that election?
Well, we hope that this postponement will be the last and ever. Otherwise, there is a need for the federal government to set a machinery to find out what caused to this postponement. This is the third time. And to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware if there was a time the federal government set machinery, a committee to investigate why this postponement, because it costs to the economy. It's need to go and investigate and find out why postponement and identify those problems. If it's caused by the individual, identify the individual and let them pay the price. The moment you take necessary action where it's deemed to be necessarily, it will put everybody on alert. Because the fact that we are independent does not mean that we take things for granted. I expect managing elections such as ours, you need not only to address the logistics, but to have a contingency plan that can stand the test of any time. In the event of any eventuality, you can use the contingency plan to replace it. Just like what happened in Anambra State. They say where over 4,000 machines were burned, but they say they replaced them. that contingency plan should be cut across and to address all these issues so that we avoid postponement, because postponement costs to the economy, and costs to the economy affect our gross development product, GDP. And anything that affects this, it will affect you and me. We may not feel the impact now, but later we'll have the impact.